Wake up. It is Monday, January 19th, 2026, Martin Luther King Jr. Day. While most of the country is, taking the day off, trying to shake off the weekend and clutching that first cup of coffee, the gears of the world are grinding harder than ever. Right now, the global elite are touching down in Davos, Switzerland for the 56th World Economic Forum. The banners are up, the private jets are all parked, and the theme this year is a spirit of dialogue.
A spirit of dialogue.
It sounds lovely, doesn't it? A spirit of dialogue. But let's be honest with ourselves. Back here in the States, just looking at the news from the last 7 days, our version of dialogue is feeling a lot less like a diplomatic summit and a lot more like a 19th century saloon shootout.
Saloon shootout is evocative, I'll give you that, but I think it misses the the cold mechanical precision of what we're actually seeing. Morning, by the way. You talk about dialogue, but the reality on the ground feels, well, much more stifled. I had a wake-up call of my own this morning, and not from an alarm clock, but from my auto insurer. I got a notification at 6:20 a.m. that my premium had been dynamically adjusted upward.
Ouch.
By 15% for the month.
15%. Did you get into a fender bender over the weekend that I don't know about?
No, the car hasn't realized a scratch. The adjustment was triggered because... Well, because my GPS data showed I parked within 2 blocks of a politically volatile gathering on Saturday.
You're kidding me.
Not at all. I wasn't even tending. I was buying books.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. The algorithm decided my risk exposure to civil unrest had increased, so it fined me.
So it fined you.
It fined me. That is the 2026 reality. We aren't having a saloon shootout. We are being managed by a predictive risk model that penalizes you before you even, draw a weapon.
That's actually terrifying.
Yeah, it is.
It's the Minority Report scenario, but for your wallet. And it perfectly frames the tension we're seeing everywhere. You look at that insurance notification and you see a dystopia of control. I look at the broader picture and I see a system desperately trying to optimize itself to prevent chaos. Because if we don't optimize, if we don't manage the risk, the alternative is what we saw last week. We need to talk about Tuesday, January 13th.
January 13th, 2026. That is a date historians are going to circle in red ink. The headlines. They called it a policy disagreement, but let's be clear about what happened. The Federal Reserve and the White House went to war.
A war?
And I don't mean a war of words on Twitter. I mean a structural break in the financial chain of command that we haven't seen since the 1860s.
You're going straight for the Civil War parallel. We are on MLK Day, so I guess history's on the mind. But comparing a banking dispute to the Civil War feels like a stretch. Or are you saying the mechanism is the same?
The mechanism is identical.
Yeah.
It's completely identical. Think about 1860. We are taught it was North versus South, right? Slavery versus freedom.
Sure.
And structurally, it was about 2 incompatible economic engines. You had the South, agrarian, asset-rich, and land and slaves, dependent on export markets for cotton and needing low tariffs.
Right.
Then you had the North, industrializing, needing protectionist tariffs to build up its factories, and demanding a centralized banking system to fund all that infrastructure.
Okay.
Those 2 models could not share a single currency and a single government. It was impossible. One had to crush the other.
And today,
Yeah.
we don't have cotton versus factories. We have what?
We have the financial civil war. The conflict on January 13th was about who controls the debt printer.
The printer, okay.
And here's the technical breakdown of what happened last Tuesday because the mainstream news really just glossed over it.
Yeah, they go.
The Federal Reserve, trying to kill this sticky 6% inflation, signaled they were going to continue quantitative tightening, so selling assets, pulling cash out of the system.
Standard operating procedure.
It's standard operating procedure to stop inflation. But the White House, they are trying to fund the largest reindustrialization project in history. They need cheap liquidity.
Right. They need the cash. They need it to fund the domestic manufacturing boom, the energy transition, the military expansion we're seeing.
Exactly. So when the Fed said, no, we are tightening, the White House effectively invoked emergency powers to direct the Treasury to issue debt that the Fed must monetize.
Wow.
They bypassed the central bank's independence.
So they just ordered them.
They ordered them. This is exactly what Abraham Lincoln did with the Legal Tender Act of 1862. Lincoln needed to fund the war, but the New York bankers, they wanted to charge him these usurious interest rates, something like 24 to 36%.
Unbelievable.
So Lincoln said, forget you, and he printed the greenback. He nationalized the money supply to save the Union.
So the White House is pulling a Lincoln. They are saying the Union, or in this case, the American empire and its reindustrialization, is more important than the sanctity of the central bank's balance sheet.
Yes, that's precisely it. They are creating what you could call a sovereign money channel. But the risk, just like in the 1860s, is that you fracture the trust in the currency.
Right.
The greenback floated against gold. It fluctuated wildly. By overriding the Fed, the White House is telling the world that the dollar is now a political tool, not some neutral store of value. It creates a schism.
So who are the two sides?
You have the centralizers who want to print our way to supremacy, and then you have the sound money faction states, banks, foreign nations who are looking at this and saying, get me out.
I want no part of this.
Exactly. That clash on January 13th wasn't just a meeting, it was Fort Sumter for the global financial system.
Okay, I see the fracture. It's a huge gamble.
Yeah.
A massive gamble. But, and here's where I have to push back on the doom-mongering.
Go on.
Lincoln won. The greenback funded the war. The North industrialized. And out of all that chaos came the Transcontinental Railroad and the greatest economic expansion in human history.
I think you are missing the Transcontinental Railroad of 2026.
And what's that? We aren't just printing money to burn it. We are printing it to build the quantum and AI infrastructure that will dominate the next century.
You're comparing artificial intelligence to the railroad.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. Think about what the railroad did. It collapsed space and time. It made it possible to move goods from New York to San Francisco in days instead of months. Quantum computing and AI are doing the same thing for information and logistics. The old guard at the Fed is freaking out because their models are obsolete. They're trying to steer the economy with a paper map while the economy is running on GPS.
Okay.
The White House realizes that to compete in a resource-constrained world, we need to shed the dead weight of the old financial bureaucracy. It feels like chaos to you, but to a systems engineer, it looks like a high-speed upgrade. We are shedding the 20th century skin to survive the 21st.
Shedding dead weight. That's a very clinical way to describe dismantling the institutions that keep the currency stable. But let's follow your logic. If this is an upgrade, it's an upgrade that leaves half the population behind. You know, evolution often looks like a catastrophe to the species that doesn't make the cut. And that brings us to the human geography of this new era. It's not just the banks that are splitting apart, it's the people.
Right.
We need to talk about the big sort because the data coming out of the 2025 census updates is, well, it's staggering.
This is the Bill Bishop thesis, right? The idea that we are self-segregating.
Bishop identified the trend 30 years ago, but he couldn't have predicted how terminal it would become by 2026. He looked at landslide counties.
Right. Define that for us.
Places where a presidential candidate wins by 20 points or more. In 1976, only about 27% of Americans lived in a landslide county.
So most people lived in mixed areas.
Most people lived in competitive areas where you had to talk to neighbors who voted differently. You had to, mow your lawn next to someone you disagreed with.
And today?
Today, the projections suggest we are nearing 60% to 65% of the population living in what I call ideological citadels. The middle ground has. It's just evaporated. Yeah. But in 2026, it is not just about voting patterns. It is about lifestyle proxies. We are seeing people move based on strict cultural coding. Red voters are fleeing to red states not just for taxes, but for ideological safety. Blue voters are concentrating in these urban fortresses. We are creating a pre-gerrymandered reality where compromise isn't just unlikely, it is mathematically impossible because the two sides never interact.
But is that purely negative? I mean, conflict arises from friction, right?
Sure.
If you have two incompatible operating systems, like we just discussed with the Civil War, doesn't it make sense to run them on separate hardware? If I'm a technocrat, I look at the big sort and I see efficiency.
Yeah.
Instead of gridlock in every town hall, you have streamlined zones of agreement.
You get local efficiency, sure, but you get national hostility. You create a silo effect where the other side stops being a neighbor and starts being an alien species.
An unknown.
An unknown. And this is compounded by what I call the algorithmic mind. This goes right back to my insurance premium.
Right.
We have traded rational, messy human thought for pre-packaged AI prompts. Your news feed, your search results, your smart glasses, they all reinforce your existing worldview to keep you engaged. We are drifting into a form of digital feudalism. We live in these walled gardens of reality.
I see.
And when you have two populations that literally cannot comprehend the other's data set, you don't have a country anymore. You have two hostile tribes sharing a border.
Or you have a country that is realizing It can't rely on internal consensus anymore.
Okay.
So it has to secure its survival through external strength. And this is the pivot I want to make. You see, the internal fracture is the end of the story.
I see it as a huge problem, yes.
I see it as the catalyst for the Monroe Doctrine 2.0. Because while we are arguing about landslide counties, the administration has made one of the most aggressive geopolitical moves in 50 years. We need to talk about Venezuela.
I struggle to find the optimism in what happened in Venezuela this month.
Strip away the emotion for a second. Just look at the chessboard.
Okay.
January 2026, the U.S. government executes a rendition operation of Venezuelan President Maduro. He is currently in custody. We have 150 warships parked off the coast of Caracas.
Right.
The media is calling it a coup, a kidnapping, a liberation. It all depends on who you listen to. But let's look at the why. Why now? Why Venezuela?
Well, the official line is restoring democracy and counter narcotics.
That's the slogan.
Yeah.
The reality is chemistry and physics. We pulled the technical data from global analytics, and the economic blueprint is just.
Yeah.
It's undeniable. Everyone knows Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world, 303 billion barrels.
Right.
But the casual listener might not know that it's heavy crude.
And why does the specific viscosity of the oil justify a rendition operation?
Because the U.S. energy system is addicted to it. Our massive refinery complex in the Gulf Coast, Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, it was engineered decades ago specifically to process heavy sour crude.
So it's a specific key for a specific lock.
Exactly. You can't just dump the light, sweet oil from the Permian Basin into a coker unit designed for Venezuelan sludge. It doesn't work. For the last few years, we've been trying to source heavy crude from everywhere else. Russia, which is off the table, the Middle East, unreliable.
Our refineries have been struggling.
They're running inefficiently. Securing Venezuela is like plugging a battery directly back into the U.S. economy. We aren't just grabbing oil, we are grabbing the specific oil that makes our machine run.
It's a supply chain fix disguised as a moral crusade.
And it's not just oil, it's bauxite. You cannot talk about the new era without talking about aluminum.
Bauxite.
Bauxite is the precursor to aluminum. You can't build a stealth fighter, you can't build a casing for a quantum computer, you can't build a Tesla Cybertruck without massive amounts of aluminum.
And the U.S. is short on it.
The U.S. has virtually no bauxite reserves. Venezuela has the largest reserves in the hemisphere.
Yeah.
Until last week, that supply chain ran through channels influenced by China and Russia. Now, it runs with the U.S. Navy.
And gold. Let's not forget the gold deposits in the Orinoco Arc.
Exactly. In a world where the Fed is fighting the White House and currencies are wobbling, having a satellite state with a vault full of gold is a massive hedge.
Yeah.
This isn't just a military move.
No.
It's an economic bailout for the American empire. It stabilizes energy prices, secures critical minerals, and backs the dollar with hard assets.
It is an economic bailout, I agree, but let's look at the cost. You call it securing the backyard. The rest of the world calls it horizontal escalation.
A new term.
It's a term analysts are using to describe this new way of waging war. Notice the legal gymnastics the White House used. They didn't declare war.
No.
They called it law enforcement. They labeled the Venezuelan leadership as a narco-terrorist syndicate.
Which is smart. It sidesteps the War Powers Act. It keeps Congress out of the loop.
It creates a legal loophole the size of an aircraft carrier. It keeps the markets calm because drug bust sounds like justice, whereas invasion sounds expensive. But make no mistake.
What's the real story?
This is imperialism with a badge. And while you see cheap gas and aluminum, the global south sees economic warfare. They see a superpower that is willing to kidnap a head of state to secure a supply chain. That creates fear.
And fear.
And fear creates a reaction. You can't just punch someone in the face and expect the rest of the room to just keep drinking their cocktails.
But does the resistance matter? If you control the resources. That's the world of the savannah concept we keep hearing about. You know, the law of the jungle. If the lion takes the kill, the hyenas might laugh, but they don't attack.
Unless the hyenas form a pack, and that is exactly what is happening on the other side of the map.
Okay.
You're focused on the tactical victory in Venezuela. I am looking at the strategic catastrophe brewing in Iran. We need to pivot to the Middle East because what's happening there is the direct countermove to your Monroe Doctrine.
The situation in Iran is. It's fluid. That's putting it mildly.
It's a tragedy in real time. We are looking at Iran in January 2026. The currency, the rial, has effectively evaporated. Inflation on food is up 70% year over year. Medicine is up 50%. The people are desperate.
And we're seeing massive protests.
We are seeing protests in over 120 cities.
And the regime's response has been the information kill switch. Total internet blackout. They pulled the plug to hide the crackdown.
They're trying to hide the collapse. This is where I use the chess term Zugzwang.
Explain that.
It describes a position where every legal move you can make only worsens your position. The Iranian regime is squeezed by internal riots on one side and immense external economic pressure on the other. They are cornered, and a cornered regime with military capabilities is the most dangerous actor on the stage.
But here is where the tech optimist in me has to jump in. You mentioned the blackout. In the old days, like the 2009 Green Revolution, that worked. Silence was the weapon.
Right.
But today,
Yeah.
we are seeing reports of over 20,000 Starlink terminals being smuggled into Iran across the Kurdish border and through the Gulf. This is the new digital battlefield.
It is a technological intervention, yes. But explain the mechanics to the listener. It's not just Wi-Fi from the sky.
Right. No, these aren't your old satellite dishes. These are phased array antennas. They're flat, they're easy to hide, and they beam signal directly to low Earth orbit satellites that are moving so fast, they're incredibly hard to jam.
So the regime can't block it.
The regime tries to jam one frequency, and the system just hops to another instantly. The ultimate weapon in 2026 isn't a missile. It's a high-speed, decentralized internet connection that bypasses the state censor entirely. It breaks the information monopoly. If the people can organize despite the blackout, the regime loses its power to terrify them in silence.
That is the optimistic view that technology liberates. But zoom out to the geopolitical reaction. While the U.S. is smuggling internet into Iran, what are the other great powers doing?
Right.
We referenced global analytics earlier. They have been tracking the naval exercises known as Will for Peace 2026, taking place right now off the coast of South Africa.
The name is ironic, but the roster is heavy. China, Iran.
And others.
Exactly.
These are nations with wildly different ideologies. You have a communist power, a nationalist oligarchy, and a Shia theocracy. In a normal world, they shouldn't get along.
Not at all.
But they're ignoring those differences to unite around one single goal: economic sovereignty. They are building the Sovereignty Club.
And what is the mechanism there? Is it just a military alliance?
No, it's financial. They are terrified of what happened to Venezuela. They saw the U.S. weaponize the dollar to crush an economy and facilitate a rendition.
They don't want to be next.
So they are building a parallel system. We are seeing the emergence of a commodity-backed ledger. It's not a new currency like the euro, it's a trade settlement system. Russia puts oil in the pot. China puts manufactured goods. Iran puts energy. They settle the trade based on the gold value of those commodities, completely bypassing the U.S. dollar and the SWIFT banking system.
So it's a high-tech barter system designed to make them immune to sanctions.
Precisely. They are building a lifeboat. The Iran crisis isn't just a local revolution, it is the stress test for this new system. If the Sovereignty Club can keep the Iranian regime afloat economically while the U.S. tries to crush it, then the power of the U.S. Treasury is broken. The bifurcation of the world becomes permanent.
So let's recap the map. You have the U.S. consolidating the Western Hemisphere, locking down Venezuelan heavy crude, bauxite, gold. You have the East consolidating around this Sovereignty Club to bypass the dollar. It really is a split. But there is one more piece of the puzzle that makes this map even weirder. The Northern Front.
Greenland.
Yes, Greenland. We have confirmed reports of massive U.S. troop movements to Greenland this month. The 10th Mountain Division is deploying elements there. Which fits the resource thesis perfectly. If we are locking down Venezuela for bauxite, we are locking down Greenland for rare earth elements.
The vitamins of the modern economy.
Exactly. Neodymium, dysprosium, terbium. You need them for the magnets in EV motors, for the guidance systems and missiles, for the hard drives in data centers. Right now, China controls 90% of the processing.
So this is a direct move against that monopoly.
Taking Greenland is the Monroe Doctrine extending to the Arctic. It is the final piece of the Fortress America's strategy.
That's the strategy on paper. But look at the logistics. I was reading the field reports this morning. It is absolute chaos up there.
Chaos how?
We are surging thousands of troops into an area with almost no infrastructure.
Wow.
We are talking about Thule Air Base, which has limited capacity, and then trying to push into the interior. Soldiers are sleeping in makeshift, winterized tents in sub-zero temperatures. The supply lines for food and fuel are stretched thin. It doesn't look like a master plan. It looks like a scramble.
A scramble.
It looks like panic.
Or it looks like rapid deployment in the face of a threat.
But it raises a massive question about NATO. Think about the map. The U.S. is stretching its military assets from the Caribbean with Venezuela to the Arctic with Greenland.
Right.
We're heavily involved in domestic suppression of dissent. We are pushing hard on Iran. Are we stretching too thin?
That's the question.
And more importantly, If I am a NATO ally in Europe, if I'm in Berlin or Paris and I see the US obsessed with the Western Hemisphere and the Arctic, I'm starting to feel very lonely.
That is a fair point. If we are pivoting to Fortress Americas, Europe is effectively being told to fend for itself.
Exactly. Is this expansion into Greenland a sign of strength, or is it the beginning of the end for the old Atlantic Alliance? The U.S. seems to be saying, we are taking our ball and our bauxite and our rare earths and going home.
Which brings us back to where we started, the stability of home. All of this, the financial split, the resource grab, the polarization, it all points back to that question of internal stability. You dropped the Civil War bomb earlier regarding the banks, but what about the streets?
I want to return to the Reconstruction parallel. After the Civil War in 1865, we had the Reconstruction era. It was an attempt to reintegrate the South. But by 1876, the North got tired.
Right.
There was a political compromise, the troops were pulled out, and the project failed. We are seeing a similar fatigue of unity now.
Fatigue with what?
Fatigue with the effort required to be one nation. The big sort is the physical manifestation of that fatigue. We are tired of arguing, so we are moving away from each other. But when you combine that social separation with the financial civil war, the debasement of the currency, you create a powder keg.
So what's the end game?
I talk about the stage 4 theory. Stage 1 is disagreement. Stage 2 is polarization. Stage 3 is segregation. Stage 4 is the fear of inevitable violence. I'm looking at the data, the insurance penalties, the bank fractures, the protests, and I'm asking the listener, are we at stage 4?
That is the heavy, gloomy take. And look, I respect the history, I do. But you are ignoring the resilience of the system. You say the system is fracturing, I say it is consolidating. Look at the data, not the slogans. The empire, if you want to call it that, is securing the energy from Venezuela, the materials from Greenland, and the technology with AI and Starlink to dominate the next century. This isn't a collapse, it's a second win.
A second win for the state, perhaps. But what about the citizen? What about the guy whose insurance just went up 15% because he walked past a protest?
The citizen benefits from the cheap energy and the stability. If we control the bauxite and the oil, the cost of living stabilizes, the inflation that is killing Iran. We avoid that by controlling the assets. It's a trade-off, sure. Less dialogue, as Davos wants, but more tangible security. Most people, when push comes to shove, will choose cheap gas and a working grid over abstract political purity.
Security, that is always the word used to sell control.
It's the word that pays the bills.
We're running short on time, but I want to leave the listener with this thought. We have thrown a lot at you today. Insurance algorithms, Civil War greenbacks, Venezuelan heavy crude, Iranian Starlink terminals. It sounds like a mess.
It is a lot.
But it is all connected. It is the sound of a world reorganizing itself under extreme pressure.
It is. And if you want to understand the military mechanics of what we discussed, specifically regarding the information kill switch in Iran and how that Starlink operation actually works, you need to see the deep dive done by the folks at Parallax Analysis.
Absolutely. We referenced them a few times today regarding the troop movements and the naval exercises. Go to YouTube, search for Parallax Analysis. They have a video titled Iran 2026, the military operation that resets the world. It breaks down the timelines and the tactical reality of that digital battlefield.
It is essential viewing if you want to know why your gas prices might fluctuate or why your internet feed looks the way it does.
Context is your only armor, people. We are entering a time where ignorance isn't just bliss, it is dangerous. If you don't want to wake up with a frozen bank account because of a wrong tweet or an insurance premium that spikes because you parked on the wrong block, you need to pay attention.
So here's the question we want you to answer in the comments or just, mull over while you drive to work. Is Greenland our next state, or is this the beginning of the end for NATO?
It's a binary choice that defines the next decade. Think about it.
Stay sharp, America. The Savannah is watching.